What is up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today we have probably my most requested video, which is going to be just an overview, a brief overview of the history of Levi's jeans going from the 1800s to now. Basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the 1800s and just block off sections based on like how the style evolved and the function and all of that. So yeah, it should be pretty interesting. I don't have anything older than the 50s to show you guys, but I will be showing you like pairs that I have for an example from like basically like the 50s to now. But yeah, I don't have anything earlier than that. I wish I did, but I don't. All right, so starting all the way in the 1800s, I'm gonna block off like the 1800s to the 1930s / early 40s World War II era as like one section. Obviously I don't have a pair of these to show you. If I did, I would be a lot richer than I am right now. But yeah, basically the beginning of Levi's was they were mining pants. They were made as mining pants out of denim. It is the first like denim jean really that gained a lot of popularity, and I will probably throw up some pictures on the screen if I can figure out how to do it on my phone, because if you didn't know, I edit everything on my phone and shoot on my phone because I'm lazy. But yeah, basically the general like how the 1800s to the 30s pairs are gonna look is they were meant to be like a replacement for overalls, so they'd be called like waist overalls instead of denim jeans. And yeah, they all had like a cinch back with a buckle so that you could buy one pair and wear that pair for your entire life. And then you would give it to your son who would go work in the mines after you, and he would wear them for the rest of his life. And that was basically the general idea behind that. And at the time, Levi's were very, very, very expensive for the average person. That's why they have a lot of the features, like I mentioned, like the buckleback is the most notable one. All the rivets that you would see on those, they're all meant to be like super durable, and you were supposed to be able, you'd have the buckleback so you could cinch them in if they didn't fit you right or whatever, so you'd have the right fit. And yeah, they were meant to last you for a lifetime. It was supposed to be you bought one pair and then you would repair it, and then it would rip again and you'd repair it again and just keep wearing them every single day, day in, day out. At your job. And it was all about functionality, nothing about style. Nobody was just like supposed to be wearing these around casually. And that went from the 1800s to about the 1930s, right before World War II. And those pairs are like super, super rare. I wish I had a pair. I want a pair badly, but I don't have a pair to show you. I'm gonna throw up some pictures so you can get like an idea of them, but those pairs are gonna range like in the tens of thousands to the hundreds of thousands, depending on how old they are, because they are just that rare and that sought after. So the next era I'm going to be talking about is going to be the World War II era, because it sets the stage for Levi's as a company going forward. And I would have a pair to show you guys, but probably one of my biggest regrets ever is I lost an auction on eBay for a pair of World War II Levi's for like $500, which, if you know how much they're worth, that's a dumb steal. And yeah, I'm kicking myself over it, but at the time I was still broke boy trapping and I hadn't sold a pair of E's before, so I couldn't like afford to spend as much money as I will now on a pair. But besides the point, yeah, World War II, obviously that's the big shift in Levi's is World War II, because like with everything, all the raw materials, they needed them for the war. So like, you know, the steel, the copper, all of that for the buttons and everything, they needed that to go on planes or whatever, or make military uniforms, whatever. So Levi's didn't have access to them, and they didn't have access to the raw materials as much, so they had to scrap the buckleback. They got rid of a lot of the rivets. They even had to get rid of the stitching on the back pocket. And yeah, so it completely changed how the jeans looked. They were still producing them throughout the war. They had donut buttons because they had to save the metal that would be on the middle of the button. Like, I'll show you. Like right there, they had donut buttons because they wanted to save that metal too. So yeah, that whole era of Levi's is super important because it sets the stage for Levi's afterwards, which, like the US, if you know about US history, after World War II, everything was booming, obviously, so that's when Levi's hit its big boom and they became really commercial. So we are finally in the era where I can show you actual examples of these, which is going to be the late 40s, early 50s to the like 60s-ish. But yeah, it's probably the most iconic era of Levi's. You can make an argument for the 60s as well that I'll show you, but yeah, 50s Levi's. Honestly, these ones are probably 60s, but this is when Levi's basically made the jean that everybody thinks is ubiquitous today. So basically every pair of jeans that you see is based off of these pairs. So like I was saying with World War II, since they had to ration supplies and stuff, they'd have donut buttons for when they started making them. And again, after the war, obviously you have the Levi Strauss button everybody knows. And then they had to take off like a lot of these rivets. You see, they took off the ones on the watch pocket as well. And yeah, these are the most iconic pair of jeans. They have that signature straight fit. These ones fit a little bit wider than like the 60s pairs, for example. But yeah, the most iconic cut of jeans. This is one of my pairs. I have like 3 pairs of these. This is also when Levi's wanted to become like a fashion thing. They wanted to become like a casual staple. So like these would cost you like $5 in the 50s, if I remember right, which is like equivalent to $50 today. But the point was they started producing a lot more of these. You weren't just supposed to wear these to work. You were supposed to wear them out all the day. They started introducing different cuts of Levi's at this time. Obviously they had different cuts before, but this is the time when they'd introduce like the student cut, which is a little bit slimmer through the waist, a little bit higher rise, and a little bit slimmer through the leg compared to these. Personally, I like the fit of those a little bit more. These are a little bit more sought after. And then they had like the 501 ZXX. So like you can see the iconic button fly on these. There would be a zipper there instead. I don't know exactly when the 505 came out. I think it was like late 50s or early 60s, but somebody correct me if I'm wrong. But yeah, super iconic pair of jeans. I'll show you some more of the details so you kind of know how to know what these are. So this pair needs some repairs and they're kind of shredded, so I haven't been wearing them lately. See on the butt, but obviously the most iconic thing about these is going to be the hidden rivets, which literally just means that they have these little rivets on the inside and you can't see them from the outside. Before, well, they did it on the World War II pairs too, but they concealed them on the Bucklebacks as well. But like for a while, you would be able to see these rivets through the back. Now you can't. They obviously have that Big E tab, both sides. Super soft, selvage denim, obviously. Show you that. Boom. This pair is super worn in. Tons of original repairs. The waistband, these ones are kind of cool because they have the offset belt loop. So yeah, normally it would be centered, but for a little bit there, they were doing it on the side like that. I don't think these have a selvage. Yeah, they don't have selvage there on the pocket bags. Obviously they have the 5-button fly with the V-stitch. Like I said, this is most likely like a 60s pair of rivets, but the cut is pretty much the same. But yeah, next we're getting into the 60s. Also, I should mention like all the celebrities of like the 50s when they were wearing Levi's, it's the cut. Like there's pictures of like Marilyn Monroe wearing these with like a heavy cuff. I'll throw them in here if I can figure it out, like I said. But like, yeah, anybody in the 50s wearing a pair of Levi's 501s, this is the cut that they were probably wearing. All right, so the next iconic era for Levi's we're gonna talk about is going to be the 60s. These are like my latest pair I bought. I actually already sold them. That's kind of why I made this video, because I don't like all this patchwork on them, to be completely honest. Some people do, I personally don't. But this is the 1966 model of Levi's. This is like towards the end of the Big E era. The tab on these is like cut, so you can't see it anymore. But yeah, these are like a really nice slim fit. This is probably my favorite cut of Levi's to wear. They're like a slim straight cut versus these ones are way wider. Like I can show you on the legs. There they feel a lot wider. Yeah, you can kind of see that. So this is the 60s pair in the front. This is the 50s pair. You can see there's like probably another 2 inches in the leg on the 50s pair versus the 60s pair. I haven't measured it out or anything, but still carries a lot of the same characteristics of the 50s pair. This one has the paper back patch, obviously. And the way you can identify these is they still have the V-stitch. There's biggies after these that have the V-stitch, but honestly, I think they're a little bit overrated. I've had a lot of those pairs. I don't really pay up for them at all. But yeah, 66 pair is really good. This is like kind of like the rock star iconic model, like the Rolling Stones. I think they wore the 505, but if they wore a 501, they'd be wearing these. All those iconic bands of the 60s obviously would be wearing these if they were wearing Levi's 501s. But yeah, nice slim fit. This is kind of like same as like Helmut Lang, I'd say would be the closest designer to this. But yeah, super iconic cut, really comfortable, great pair. I already sold this pair, but I'm probably gonna buy another pair today because these ones fit me nice. I just, like I said, I didn't like the patchwork on these. Obviously, I'll show you more details. Still in the selvage era. Have the nice lemon thread single stitch waistband, single stitch pockets, everything. But yeah, on to the next. All right, so I'm gonna lump in basically the rest of the selvage era, which I'm gonna include like 60s to 70s biggies because they do go farther than most people realize into this, but just the regular selvage era, the red line era, I guess you could call it. This is, in my opinion, the end of Levi's being like really good. This is when you see the beginnings of the orange tabs as well, starting in the late 60s, early 70s, and then obviously going until the late 90s. I think 99 is when they stopped making them. But on these pairs, still have the selvage. You don't have that big E tab anymore. This is an 80s pair, by the way. They had the paper tag. I think I ripped this one off because it was just like ripping off already. Chain stitch waistband. They started making like these ones, which are actually like a light or medium wash instead of just the deep indigo. That obviously would have to wash off over time to get to this wash. I really do like these. These are great. They kind of have a similar fit to the 66s. I'd say they're a little bit wider, but not like as wide as the 50s pairs, obviously. But yeah, these ones, I'm going to talk about like buying at the end too. These are probably the ones I would recommend to anybody if you think you would buy more than 3 pairs of like 501s basically. But yeah, great pair of jeans. Obviously still have the 5-button fly, everything. This is when Levi's and the rest of America started mass producing stuff heavy. So after this, the quality goes like way down. These are like kind of like in the rise of like shopping malls and stuff too. Kind of the peak of American commercialism. But yeah, this is like the end of what I would consider to be like good for Levi's. But yeah, super essential. On to the next. All right, so now we're going to get into the 80s and into the 90s. Honestly, there's not too much of a difference between the two. This is like, I would consider this to just be like the made in US Levi's era. This is when Levi's was just pumping out jeans. Not that they weren't before, but this is just like peak American commercialism. The quality on these suffered a lot in my personal opinion versus the selvage pairs. Like This denim is nowhere near as soft as selvage. Yeah, I mean, they're better than a pair that you would buy today of Levi's, but like, they're not like, I don't know. They are what they are, is what I'll say. I'm not trying to trash these too hard and come off like super pretentious or anything. I'm just saying that these are, when everything started getting mass produced heavy, and I don't think there's too much of a difference between like an 80s pair like this and a 90s pair like this. The quality isn't like that much better. The 80s pairs, like, sure, they're a little bit better, but it's like, I don't know. You're just getting into, with both of these pairs, this is like a late 90s pair. You're just getting into like malls, and you could buy these everywhere, kind of how it is today, but they're still made in the US, so the quality is like slightly better, but it's not like amazing, is I guess what I'm trying to say, or not nearly as good as anything earlier than that. But yeah, these are good if you just want a pair of jeans to just throw on and wear every day, or you don't want to shell out hundreds of dollars on like what I would consider to be a good pair. So there's no knock against these. I think they're better than anything you can buy today, except for maybe like high quality Japanese repros. But just know when you get into them, this is not like when people are talking about like vintage Levi's, this is not what they're talking about. Right, so the very last era of Levi's we are going to talk about is going to be the modern era. These are a pair of Y2K ones. This is when Levi's stopped producing in the US. They fell off heavy, in my personal opinion. You can find these at most thrift stores. We're being completely honest here. But yeah, they changed a lot. You can see the stitching on there. It doesn't look as good. They switched their denim, so the denim quality is not quite as good. And this is basically when like Levi's in the early 2000s was going through like filing for bankruptcy. They weren't popular at all, or not at all, but they just weren't as popular as they used to be. So yeah, the quality of these jeans suffered a lot. You got different lines. Obviously, I'm only talking about 501s, but this is where you get like silver tab, stuff like that, trying to compete with like Jean Co and the other styles of the time. But yeah, in my opinion, this is when Levi's essentially does, I mean, they did before, but this is really when they fully devolved into like being just like a step above H&M or whatever fast fashion brand you want to throw out there. I don't think they're that good at all, but if you just want a cheap pair of jeans to just mess around in, these are great. But yeah, that's all I really have to say about modern Levi's. All right, so I was gonna put a whole like buying guide into this, but I'm not now because it doesn't make sense when I could just do that as a totally separate video. So, buying guide coming soon. I know this is kind of a longer video. If you made it all the way to the end, I appreciate you. Like I said, I do have a lot of Levi's in stock, link in bio. But yeah, if you like this content, consider subscribing, throwing me a like, and yeah, have a great day.